If you're new to my YouTube channel, please click that subscribe button and remember to click the bell icon to get notifications of all my uploads throughout the week. Hi everyone, Mike here. So I've been asked by my good friend Gina Aarons if I would do a guest spot for the Facebook group My Creative Year. Now the prompts for this particular week, I believe, for July is go-to techniques and top tips as part of the process. So I wanted to try and combine those all together and relook at some products that we've had sitting on our shelves for nearly 10 years collectively, I think. Distress inks. They've been out on the market now, I think, since around about 2008, or beginning of 2008. So 10 years. And I think sometimes we forget the techniques that we learnt with those distress inks back in the day. So I still use these kind of techniques a lot. They are my go-to techniques for water-based inks. So I thought I would share my top 5 favourite ones with you today. So for the first go-to technique, I'm going to be doing the water mushing method of creating a background on the tag. So I've picked out 3 of my distress inks. I've got Spiced Marmalade, Crushed Olive, and my favourite blue of all time, Peacock Feathers. That's only followed very closely by Cracked Pistachio, but Peacock Feathers has to be one of my favourite distress colours of all time, and it's one of the newest ones too. Well, one of the newish ones anyway. So to start off with then, I'm going to take the ink pad. I have a polypropylene mat here. Now this is just a chopping mat that you can buy from any kind of kitchen supply store, and it's just for chopping, you know, things like chicken and that kind of stuff, and you can just wipe it down and just keep it for meat if you want to. So it's nothing exciting. I've got a mister bottle with water in. I do have one for alcohol too, and they're marked so that I know which one is which and not to use the wrong one. And I'm just going to add some water to that distress ink on the mat and then just give it a little bit of a rub. Now obviously this will end up with dirty fingers, and all I'm going to do is I'm just going to pick the tag up and I'm going to just lay it in, smush the colour onto the tag just like that, and then I'm going to grab my heat gun and I'm going to dry this off, and then I'm going to repeat that with the other 2 colours. So I'll get to drying and I'll be right back. So that's the Peacock Feathers done. I'm now going to do the same thing with the Spiced Marmalade. Don't need a lot. Lid's already off on that one. Add the water, give it a squish with your fingers, just wipe off, and pick your tag up, and then you can see the areas where you haven't got any colour, and you can begin picking the colour up to create those great kind of backgrounds. Now yes, the ink is going to react. That's the whole nature and the whole purpose. So you get those primary colours, or those colours that you first used on the white, and then when they start to mix and blend, you get a nice kind of texture, a nice kind of mixture and blending of all of the colours. So let's just remove the excess ink from there, and then once again get this dried off, and then I'll be right back for us to add our next colour. Okay, so that Spiced Marmalade is now dry. So I was going to use Crushed Olive, but because I've used orange and kind of blue, we've already got green tones in the background. So I've decided, as is the artistic prerogative, that I'm actually going to switch out to a purple. So I'm going to use instead Dusty Concord. Now purple isn't my most favourite colour, but just because it's not my favourite colour doesn't mean to say that I'm going to ignore it from the spectrum completely. So I am still going to use it. So I'm just going to give it a bit of a mix up. And then I'm going to grab my tag and just start dipping it in around, just to get some of those colours mixing in there. And I'm not going to do a lot because it will add some darkness to it. So let's get rid of that. It's a nice contrast from bright to darker. So let me get it all dried and then I'll be right back. Okay, so we've got some of those nice purplish tones showing through, which creates a really nice kind of mottled, almost like a granity kind of marbly background. And for that, you can either use that as is and pick out some of those shapes with a black pen to create a really nice kind of abstract background, or you can stamp over the top with whatever you want to. You've got a great start to a background just by using those distress inks and water rather than just using them for stamping. So you can use them to get some great watercolour effects for backgrounds. So for the next technique, we're going to need to start off with a blended ink background. So I've brought out two of the colours that I've had previously, but I wanted something a little bit brighter for the background to help blend together. So we've got Twisted Citron, which is a nice kind of zesty green. So I'm going to start off, I'm going to grab an ink blending tool. So we're starting with a fresh one, and I'm going to start blending that colour onto my background. And I'm making sure that I've got plenty of colour, because the technique that we're going to do next involves water droplets. So we need to get a really nice kind of darkish colour, or intense colour rather than dark, if you understand what I mean, for this to be able to work really well. So the next, spiced marmalade, so that can come in, and we'll start blending that colour into the previous. Just nice even circles. Blend that colour, and then we can just add in a little bit down at the bottom, so there's no harsh lines, just like so. And then the peacock feathers, and then we can bring that colour in and start blending out. And I'm going to bring right in and just lightly blend outwards to that really nice colour. And then if we think we've gone a little bit too heavy with the blue or any of the other colours, you can always come back in again and make that colour a little bit more intense. So there we go. So we've got a nice blended background. So to get our water droplet effect, what we need to do is take our water source, spritz into your hand, and then just let it drip over your background. Now if you don't want to do that with your hand, then take your water source. If you have a pipette, you can just add droplets of water with your pipette to get a similar effect. And of course it does help if you use a clean piece of kitchen towel. So we'll let the water stand for a second or two and then go straight down and lift straight back off again. And that will lift the colour from that background. Now because we've used a textured kitchen roll, you also get a little bit of that texture from the kitchen roll too, which is cool. So you can look at that and you can go, hang on a second, I want a little bit more water about there. So we'll add a couple more drops, maybe one more up there, and another one maybe down here, and maybe another one just about there. Let that sit for a second so that the ink reactivates, starts lifting from the surface, and then you can take your kitchen roll and then just lay it back over the top, lift up, back over the top, lift up. And you have a really nice kind of mottled, almost a bokeh effect in that background. That again, you can use as a background as your base to start a project. So it adds a little bit more depth, a little bit more interest into the background of any project that you're doing. Okay, so for the third technique, we're going to do something a little bit darker. So this time I've got walnut stain, which is a nice darkish brown. So I want to start off with a nice kind of dark brown base. And then I'm going to go quite liberally all over the tag. So we get a nice kind of colour base. And I'm going to team up some colours that you probably wouldn't normally have thought of, or probably you will know about these kind of colour combinations, but you probably might have not tried to do it yourself with this kind of like inked background. And when I start concentrating, sometimes I forget to speak, so you have to forgive me if I do. Okay, so dark walnut stain, and then I'm going to bring back out that twisted citron that we used earlier. I'm starting to get a bit dirty fingers, but that's okay. And then bring that nice kind of limey green back into the mix, so you're creating a kind of chocolate lime background colour. It's a nice combination of contrasts. Now for this particular technique, I always find that two colours work best. And if I see down here at the bottom, my fingers are actually lifting the ink. That's how reactive they can be sometimes, look. There we go. That's a little bit better. Okay, so I've got my chocolatey, limey kind of background. I'll just put those inks away. And then the next technique is a nice ghosting technique. A bit like the water droplets, but this time we're going to use a baby wipe. So I'm just going to grab a baby wipe from my stash, put those to one side, and then I'm just going to push down on the stencil, make sure I've got it as straight as I want it, and then I'm just going to gently start rubbing through the stencil doing it in small circular motions. Just for a minute or two, and then I'm going to lift it off. Now you can take your heat gun and heat set that again, or you can just take a kitchen towel and then just lift it straight off. I'm going to do both. So I've just taken the excess water from that, and then I'm just going to give this a quick dry, and then I'll be right back. Okay, so there you go. You can see how that pattern from the stencil has transferred through and allowed you to create a really nice kind of ghosted pattern texture in the background. Again, you can now use this background for whatever project that you want to do. So you can either stamp over it again or decorate this, add some focal images, maybe some ribbons, some roses, some paper roses, or a sentiment to it to add, or just use it as a technique practice. So there are lots of different ways to utilise a background of this nature. Okay, so once again we need to start off with a blended background. So I've brought back in my purple. So I've got the Dusty Concord again. So I'm just going to load up the sponge and start adding that colour into the background. Creating a nice kind of mottled coloured effect. So this time I'm going to use some Halloween-y kind of colour. So I've got purple. So let's just bring some of that in. And then put that to one side, and then bring out the spiced marmalade again, which is a nice orangey colour. And then finish off with our third Halloween colour. Let's have that twisted citron, that bright zazzy green. Great Halloween colour combinations. And again, if you want to make one of the other colours darker, then that's entirely down to you, your decision. Okay, so there's my motley blended background. So the next thing that we're going to do is just bring in a stamp. And I'm going to take my water. First of all, make sure that my work area is mostly clean. It says mostly. It doesn't have to be 100% clean, but it does help a little bit. I'm going to spritz out some water onto the mat, and then I'm going to take the stamp and I'm going to drop the stamp into the water. And then bring in my tag, and then I'm going to stamp down, and you can see almost immediately the water has clung to the stamp and given you that same kind of ghosted effect. So let it sit for a second or two. I'm just going to clean up the mat while that's activating, and I'm just going to take the remainder of the tissue and I'm just going to start lifting off that stamp. Now this was a script stamp. Now you're not going to get it absolutely perfect, you're not going to get a perfect impression because the water obviously is very, very fluid, but you will get that nice kind of ghosted effect. Now you can use like a floral stamp or anything you want to, but you won't get a perfect one. You won't get a perfect impression, but you will get some of the shape of the stamp transferring with the water and giving you that kind of really nice ghosted effect into your background. So you can stamp with water with your distress inks too. Okay, so last go-to technique with distress inks and water, I'm going to put one of the tags onto my stamp press, and then I'm going to take my stamp, and I have some jet black archival ink here. Now I know this isn't distress ink, but I need to use a solvent-based ink or a permanent ink to work with my base colour for this next technique. You could either use Stays On, archival ink, any kind of permanent ink if you want to, or even do this with embossing powder, Versamark ink and black embossing powder, or even any embossing powder or ink colour of your choice. So I'm just going to stamp down with my what's this one called? This one's called Miss Austin, I think it is, from Indigo Blue. There you go, Miss Austin. Not the same as my Jane Collage one that I used the other day. Different, similar, but different. This one's a much older stamp, hence the different packaging. So I think I'm going to just go over that one more time with the ink, which obviously is the beauty of the stamp press, that you can go back over more than once if you think your stamp or your ink you haven't put enough on. So I'll drop that down one more time, a little bit of stamp CPR. There we go, and that's much better. So I'm happy with that. So I can take that off, remove my stamp press, and then we're going to take the stamped image and I'm going to grab some distress ink, so Tattered Rose. I'm going to add some of that onto my craft mat. I've got my water brush and a piece of kitchen towel. Make sure, have I still got water in my water brush? No, I need to replenish. 2 secs. Make sure I'm getting the water and not the alcohol, because that would have been funny. These pipettes coming very, very useful. Okay, so my water brush is now replenished, and I can pick up some of that colour and use that to start watercolouring. Just manoeuvre the colour around with the brush. And just like any other kind of water-based colourant, the more you go over, the darker it gets. So your darker, shadier areas, if you go over a couple of times, you'll get that kind of depth and dimension to the colour that you want. And this is the reason why I used the archival ink, because if I'd have used any kind of water-based ink, the minute I started using the water brush, it would have all mixed and lifted and all blended together, and we don't want that. So let's find a nice pink colour, or let's go with a reddish colour that we can lighten down. So this is Festive Berries. And then just take a little bit of that colour, add some water, and then we can start watercolouring some of those flowers in a hair. And the beauty about using these kind of watercolours is that when you're done, and if you think you've put too much on, you can just lift it back off again. There we go. Nice kind of pinkish colour there. So let's then bring some more colour in. Let's grab that twisted citron again. Add some water. And we can start adding in some nice green tones. It's almost like tinting an old, like an old photograph. So you can start adding in some nice colours wherever you want to. Into the background. Nice kind of cathartic exercise. Nice and relaxing. I'm going to take Victorian Velvet, and then we can start adding in more colour. And you can just add whatever kind of colours to your palette that you want to. And because it's water based, we've still got that green there, haven't we? So I can then come back and see, oh okay, we have some leaf colours there, or some leaf patterns. A bit more in, just a tad more colour. And then Victorian Velvet, so let's have some yellow brought into that. Clean off the brush. Let's see what we got. Fossilised amber. Whenever I'm doing anything like this, I end up with a huge pile of distress inks all over, because it turns into a most wondrous kind of watercolory background, and you can add in whatever colour wherever you want to. Of course, just adding a little bit more water, you can blend those colours quite nicely. Okay, let's get some blue in there. And like I said, bring the water in and you can start to blend those colours together. So you get a nice transition, if that's what you're looking for. So add a little bit of blue, get rid of, and some more water, and then just blend that colour out and in to wherever you want to. So you can see, you can start to build up some really, really nice deep colours, and also some real nice subtle colours if that's what you want. There you go. A nice kind of watercolour effect background with distress inks. I'm going to have a quick tidy up and I'll be right back. So there you go. So 5 different kind of techniques, all using the distress inks and water. And I think sometimes, you know, we kind of forget what the techniques are with products that we've had for a long, long time. And of course there will be some people out there who are just starting on their journey and didn't know that you could do these 5 techniques with water-based inks. So for some it'll be yeah, been there, done that, but for others it'll be, you know, one of those penny drop moments where it'll be, I never knew you could do that. So I think we've got to remember sometimes that it is good to refresh old techniques and sometimes just inject a bit of life back into those products that we've had sat on our shelves gathering dust. In this case, with distress inks, for over 10 years, because it has been around about 10 years, I think, since they were first introduced onto the craft and art market. So techniques that we've probably taken for granted and forgotten about, it's time maybe to dust off those techniques and start introducing them again back into our projects. Let's get some life back into those projects, back into those products that we've spent hard-earned money on, and let them start earning their keep once again. So I hope you've enjoyed this kind of like refresh for those water-based techniques with the distress inks, or if you're one of those people where it's brand new, I hope that you learned something. So that's all from me today. I'll speak to you all again very, very soon. Bye for now. I'd also like to say a huge thank you to all of my angels, without whose generosity and support these videos would not be possible. Thank you.